Hello, I'm Rick Stivers. I'd like to welcome you today to Young Martin's Reels. And today we're going to be working on this Chinese-made Zebco 888. Now, if you've ever looked at the difference, or a USA model, it's completely different from this thing. The USA model doesn't have ball bearings. It's completely different reel. So we're going to be doing this one. I want to dedicate this reel to my late sister, Kathleen. Kathleen moved to San Antonio about 10 years ago, and pretty much from the time she got here, every Monday morning, she and I would go fishing out at Lake Calaveras. And when we grew up, we always grew up using spincast reels similar to this, usually much smaller, but similar. And that's what she got used to. And when I moved away from home, I learned to use other types of reels, bait casters and spinning reels and trigger spins. I used all those things and I got used to them. Well, she never did. And so when she started going fishing with me, she was trying to use my fishing gear, and she was trying to use Mitchell 300s. And she just never could quite get the grasp of flipping that bail every time. She would forget, and she'd go to cast, and the next thing you know, she'd thrown the lure off. And she lost quite a few of them that way. She'd pull that rod back and go throw it out there, and you'd hear fing, and off would go the lure. And we were fishing for redfish out at Calaveras, and she really disliked those. So what I did is I went out and bought her one of these Zebco 888s. I had talked to my dad about what model he thought I should get, and rather than buy her a vintage reel, he wanted me to buy her a new one. So I bought her one of these 888s, and she really enjoyed that, and we fished with that for a number of years before she finally moved back to Louisville. And she just passed away this last year. And Kathleen, I'm dedicating this reel to you. I know that you enjoyed fishing with your 888. So let's get started on this. We're going to start off by taking off the front cover, and we will unspin the spinner, spinner head. And this one isn't too bad off. It's fairly clean inside. A quick cleanup will have that ready to go. Okay, when we flip it over, we see that we have our E-clip on the front. Take that off. Now under this E-clip, we're going to have a stainless steel drag washer, followed up by a Teflon drag washer, and then the spool is going to come off. Now under the spool is going to ride this red drag washer. Under that is going to be this stainless steel drag washer. Under that is going to be this really heavy duty drag washer, and if you look at it compared to this one, there's quite a difference in the size of those. Okay, and it's got a wide side and that's narrow side. The narrow side's going to go up. Okay, those go like that, and then you've got your drag assembly washer here. Next to that is going to be this drag rod right here. Pull that out, and with that out, we'll be able to lift the drag knob out. Let's do it this way. Yeah, we'll get to it when we do the back side. How's that? All right, let's go ahead and remove this screw on this side. Now this handle can go on either way. You can fit it from one side or the other, so it will wind either way. With the screw out of that side, now we can take the handle out on the other side. And at this point, all of this will slide out of this rear housing. Now, if you were just of a mind, we can go ahead and take this drag knob out at this point. Now, if you were of a mind just to go through and lubricate this, clean it and lubricate it, what you could do is spray this down now, good with WD-40, spray it inside these bearings over here, spray it inside this set of bearings here, spray all these parts down, and then you can take and stick the handle on and exercise all those bearings real good. Once you had that done, you can come back, wipe it all down with a cotton swab, and then go back and grease the parts and put oil on the bearings, and everything would be fine. But let's say instead, what you've got to do is replace this pinion gear. Let's say you needed to replace that. Well, in that case, the rest of this is going to have to come back apart. And this is where things got a little bit tricky for me the other day when I took this apart to check it out. We're going to start off by taking out this. I believe this to be an adjuster, and I'll show you how it works. All right, get the screws out. Gently lift up on this bar right here, and this will lift out. And when you look at it, you will see that it is a wedge. And what that wedge does is you put the flat side of it up against the bearing here, and you push it down in this hole, and as it tightens down, as you tighten it down, you can feel it apply tension towards the bearings. You only want to get it tight enough to where it's just starting to create tension against those bearings. Then you can back it off just a hair, and it should be good. So we got that part out. Now we're going to take out these two bearing retainers. All right, this part got a little tricky when I tried to do this the other day. What you have to do is go in here with a screwdriver and slide these bearings out off the end of the shaft like that. Okay? The other side's a little more difficult to get in behind, but at least you've got the gear to lever against. Okay? Once we get it over here, we're going to slide that bearing off. Now we've got both bearings out. At that point, this crankshaft will just lift out. Like that. Now, if you don't want to have a fight on your hands putting this back together, then leave this together just like this. However, we're going to take that apart, and I'm going to show you why you don't want to unless you have to. Out comes the axle shaft, and you can clean it up good. Then you've got a bearing in here. That's your last bearing. And you can pop it out if you wish. There you go. And all three bearings, nope, this bearing's smaller than those two. And my screwdriver has become magnetized. How about that? All right. And at that point, this is all ready to be cleaned and scrubbed. And at this point, we're going to go to this guy. And I'm going to zoom in on this, and I'm hoping I'm going to remember to come back out. All right, this guy is not pleasant to put back together. Okay, this is your anti-reverse assembly. It's got two washers. We can slide those out. And this plastic lever, and it's got ball bearings inside here, ball bearings and springs. And if you take this apart, it's going to be fun putting it back together. We're going to do that on video right now so that you know how to do it. It took me about a half hour the first time I took it apart to try to figure out how to get it to go back together without the ball bearings just flying everywhere. So let me show you what I came up with. We're going to go ahead and take the whole assembly off. Go ahead and rotate it, slide it out, and you can look at it right like that. Okay? There's how it all goes together. Now, does it go back together that easily? No. When you go to try to slide this back in, you're going to find that it normally, look at that, it went right back in. Normally, that doesn't go back together that easily. So, we're going to take it all the way apart, take the ball bearings out of it, and reassemble it. Now, here's your cam in the middle. All right. Now, we're going to take and clean all this off and re-grease it and start it from scratch. In the meantime, I'm going to shut the camera off and we'll come back to it. Okay, now we're back. Everything is clean and we're ready to start assembling. What I found the other day when I did these is that you want to try to use a small amount of grease and put it into each of these holes right here where the bearing sits. And you got to be careful because these little springs will come off. Like so. Slip it right back into the hole that it came out of. And this one really wants to stick to my finger rather than going back in the hole. You see now why I tell you not to take this apart unless it's really gritty inside. It has to come apart for a reason. Right there, like that. Yep, I'm not on. There we go. These little bearings in their cups, like that. The bottom of the bearings have a tendency to want to angle outward. Just slip them in and they'll drop into the cup. If they're not in the cup, they will not fit back inside the way they belong. There we go. All right. Okay, with that in place, we can slip this back over like so. And you see the fork here, you need it to be on the bottom side of this parallel over here, with this long side over here facing away from the fork. Slide that down like so. Now, once you've got it to that point, if you want, you can come back and add some more grease to it, which will help keep everything in there glued together. Now, on a lot of anti-reverse bearings, you don't want them to be greasy, but this one, it doesn't seem to hurt it to be greasy. It was greased when I got it, and it's still greased, and it seems to work just fine that way. All right, with that in there, then this center shaft goes in, like so. And now comes the hard part. You got to get the whole thing up at once. And this is where it gets tricky. Like so. Keep it all together. And now you're going to want to slip it back into here. If that slips out, you can just maneuver it around. There you go. And there you go. It's ready. We're going to slide back out. Like so. Put the last two washers back on. And there's your anti-reverse back together. Now comes the slightly difficult part of slipping it back in. It's hard to see, but there's a post right here. If you follow this lever right here, all right, this is your anti-reverse override lever. And what you want is for that lever to be, it doesn't seem to really matter too much which position it's in. I'm going to go with the upper position because I think it's easier to get the hook to go in, this white fork over here. But when this goes back in now, you want to try to hold it so that it can't fall off. All right, you've got that there. Let's take a look at our axle assembly. Make sure that the axle will slide on the shaft, like so. And this one's got a really, really strong spring. So we're going to go ahead and grease it. We do not want to take that spring off if we can absolutely help it. So let's go ahead and put some grease on the axle shaft itself where it slides on that. And let's operate it a few times. Now, if you can, if your fingers are strong enough to push it down and hold it down a little bit, you can come back and add a little grease under the pinion gear as well. And for some reason, it's caught and doesn't want to go back. There it goes. Okay. All right. So that's greased underneath that pinion gear. That should work fine for many, many years to come. Let's go ahead and oil our axle shaft. Let's go ahead and clean up our bearing assembly. See if I got something there that will fit it better. There we go. We want to slide that down so that we can spin it like so. See if it'll work on both of them. Yeah, that'll work. Need something to hold the center. Okay, put some oil on that bearing. Spin it good. Make sure that the bearing is spinning freely on the center. Then take and slide it back into the case like so. With that done, remember we've already oiled our axle shaft. Slide that in. In order to hold this in place while you're installing the rest of it, go ahead for a few minutes and just screw on your spinner head. It seems to be much easier with my right hand than my left hand. Let's turn it around. It's just enough to hold that axle shaft so it can't pop up out of there. With the axle shaft in place, we're going to take that fork now and put it over top of that pin coming across from this anti-reverse override lever. You also probably want to lift this guy up out of your way at your clicker. There we go. That's down inside there. We're mated up to the pinion gear. At this point, we need to lubricate these two bearings. Now, if you choose to put grease in here, and that's what somebody did when they greased this last, is they greased those. You can do that, but it slows your reel down. So part of the reason behind putting bearings in there is so that it will spin freely. And if you put grease in there, it's going to slow it down. So I recommend oil, but that's up to you. All right, with that properly seated, now it's time to put your bearings in. We'll go ahead and start with this bearing over here on this side and see if we can't get it aligned properly. Get it to go in. Okay, there we go. Once you get it started, you can take your handle and help it in. The handle's not going to be able to push it all the way in though, because it tends to bottom out before it fits all the way in, up inside there. So push it in that point and we'll finish it off in just a minute. Let's go ahead and get the other side in. Okay, get the handle on there. And you can hear that snap. Well, that snap is the handle bottoming out. So it gets you most of the way, but it doesn't get you all the way. Okay, once you get there, go ahead and push your bearing in the rest of the way. Do the same thing on the other side. All right. Once you've done that, go ahead and start your bearing caps. Don't tighten them all the way down yet. Just snug, just a little bit. Matter of fact, I think it might be a little too much. Let's back it off a little. There we go. All right, let's put the other side on. This side we're going to tighten all the way down. Remember, these are small screws. They're easy to break or snap off. And once you've snapped one off in that body, you're pretty much done, I think. Okay, with that done, remember we still got this end cap up a little bit. We've got our adjuster. We're going to drop that in. What that's going to do is as you tighten it down, it's going to start putting preload on those bearings. Okay, got our preload on. Now, go ahead and put your handle on. Don't all the way, just slip it on. And let's turn it. All right, so far it's turning freely. Let's tighten the adjuster down a little more. That's good. Okay, let's see if we have any free play. No, we don't. I think that's tight enough. Go ahead and tighten your bearing cap back down the rest of the way. And let's come back now and re-oil these bearings one more time. Now that we have our bearing caps installed, it's time to go ahead and grease up our main gear and our pinion gear. You can probably get enough grease on your main gear to take care of greasing the pinion gear. All right, prior to reinstalling your back plate, you've got to install your drag wheel. Now this drag wheel's got two sides. It's got this side here, which is going to face to the rear, and this side which faces to the front, because it's got this oblong in it that gear has to fit inside like that. Okay, if you try to put this in after you put the back case on, it won't fit in. You have to put it in first. Okay, so go ahead and slide your drag wheel down inside. You got to get it in there. What's it catching on? There we go. Slide the gear in the front side. Make sure that it goes down into that oblong. And when it does, you'll know, because it'll fit all the way down in there like that. See how that's fit down inside there? If it's sticking up, it means it didn't go in. And when you turn the wheel, it will turn it. Let's go ahead and leave the back off for the moment, and let's reassemble this front side. Okay, the next part that goes in, now if you look, when you set this in like so, okay, you're already that way as far as it will go. When you turn it, it will turn it this way. All right, what we're shooting for is, if you look at the case, okay, you got negative and positive drag. All right, we want to have this thing all the way on the negative drag, so it's going to be adjusted all the way that way. So if you go all the way that way, that's going to set you right there. Okay, so when you set this, I could set it like this, but then I'd have to move the drag wheel all the way around to bring it back. So set it just like that. That's your least amount of drag possible. So that's where you want to set it. Now remember we've got this big heavy washer. And remember, it's kind of inset shaped, so it's got to go in. It's got a keyway right here. We're going to set that on like so. And we've got this stainless steel washer here. It goes there. Next comes this red Teflon washer, or phenolic, whatever it is. And you don't have to grease these. They function just fine without grease. If you wish to grease them, you can. If you do grease it, here's what I recommend you do. Use some drag washer grease. Wipe it on real good. And then once you've done that, come back and wipe it gently clean so that you have just a very, very thin coating. Okay, and what that's going to do, it's going to allow you to have this piece in there, and it's going to provide just a little bit of lubricant so that if water ever does get in here, you're not going to end up with corrosion. Okay, set that on. There's our clicker. Remember that clicker we had right here? Now that's it. Keep that drag washer on. Set it in. There we go. Now comes the Teflon drag washer and our final stainless steel washer. And it's got a keyway again. It has to go on like that. Put that in place. You can slide this down and put your E-clip back in place. There we go. It's got our E-clip locked in place. Now it should turn freely. Now when we rotate this, going to our max drag, that should tighten that spool down. Okay? And that's adjustable. You can set the drag for whatever you wish it to be. Now we're going to come back and put our back plate on. This is where we want to take and put just a little bit of grease right here where that's going to ride against that post right there. And we're going to slip this on like so. That's good. This works. Okay. Then let's go ahead and put our handle on. Like so. And this handle can go on either side, left or right hand. You can set it up either way. Okay, how's our anti-reverse working? Anti-reverse override works. Anti-reverse works. Anti-reverse clicker bait alert works. There we go. And go ahead and clean up our spinner head. All right, let's go ahead and lubricate the wings on this, like so. All right, with that done, you can go ahead and screw the spinner head back on. Okay, push the spinner head button, and we are catching. Let's push this up. All right, there we go. There you have the Chinese-made Zebco 888, and it's a workhorse. It is. It's heavy. It weighs 2.5, 3 pounds. It seems like. It's got a little hook on here, so when you pull your hook back, you got a place to hook it onto. It's really a nice reel. The gears in it are nice. It's got 3 ball bearings. It's a pretty nice reel. It'll handle some heavy line, and I will say Kathleen really enjoyed fishing hers. She went out many a Monday morning, and she landed quite a few nice big striper. I think her biggest was like 28-inch that she caught on this, or a reel just like this. And I had to dedicate this one to her. Kathleen, I miss you. You were a joy to have as a sister, and one day we'll be together fishing again. And in the meantime, just wait for me. I'll be there. If you like what you saw here today, hit the like button. If you didn't like it, that's okay. Hit the dislike button. If you'd like to see more videos like this in the future, and you have not previously subscribed, please subscribe to my channel, and we'll see if we can't bring some more videos your way. The next one that we're looking at doing is this South Bend Spincast 77. He's been sitting on the shelf for quite some time, and it's time for him to move on and start a new life. So it's for now, that's Rick Stivers with Young Martin's Reels, signing out.